Hi, it's John from Android Addicts, and today we're going to be doing a comparison between the Gamesir X2 and the Razer Kishi. So in my previous video I did a unboxing and review of the Gamesir X2 here, and it's a great controller, and I did a bit of a comparison between that and the Razer Kishi here, and I noticed that some people were commenting almost upset or worried that they'd purchased the Razer Kishi and thinking that they should have waited for the Gamesir X2. So I just want to try and put those minds at ease, because the Razer Kishi is a fantastic controller. And we're just going to compare now in more detail the different features of each controller and hopefully put your minds at ease. So the first thing I want to talk about is the analog sticks. So in my personal preference, the analog sticks on the Razer Kishi are much better than the ones on the Gamesir X2. So these are, as you can see, more of your Xbox One style analog stick with a slightly concave section at the top, whereas these are more like a sort of Nintendo Switch analog stick, and as I pointed out in the previous video, they're a lot snappier than the Kishi analog sticks, and I actually prefer the sort of smoother feel of the Kishi compared to the Gamesir. Now, they're absolutely fine and they work with no problems at all, but it is worth bearing in mind that if you want an Xbox One style controller for your Android, then the Kishi will feel right at home. Okay, next up I want to compare the D-pads in a bit more detail. So, as I mentioned previously, the Gamesir X2 D-pad isn't actually a D-pad. I mean, it's more D buttons than a D-pad because they're all separate and you can't really call that a D-pad. Now this, on the Razer Kishi, is a D-pad. As you can see, you can easily roll your thumb around and go left, right, any direction you like without any problem. So calling this a D-pad, although it functions as one, is a bit unfair because it doesn't really act as a D-pad. So again, this is a win for the Kishi because the D-pad on the Kishi, although it's not the best one I've ever used, compared to the Xbox One controller for example, it is better than having separate buttons like this on the Gamesir. Okay, so next up I want to have a look at the face buttons, the A, B, X and Y on both controllers. Now they feel fine on both. They're a lot more clicky on the Gamesir, which is nice, it's good feedback. But these, again, if you're used to Xbox One controller, they feel more like an Xbox One controller would feel. Now you can also see that the button layout is different on the Gamesir here. We have BA and YX, whereas on the Kishi we have A, B, X and Y in the standard Xbox position. Now the Gamesir isn't trying to be an Xbox controller, so we can't exactly get angry at it for that layout. But it is something worth bearing in mind because these do function as they are displayed here. So if you press A, it will be an A button. It's not that the Xbox game will think you're pressing A when you click on there. It is actually an A button. So if you are used to an Xbox controller layout, again, the Kishi wins in this department. As I did say in my previous video, however, I have found that it doesn't take long at all to get used to the reverse orientation of these buttons, and within, I don't know, probably about 10 minutes or so, I was used to knowing that A was there, X was there. So you do get used to it, so it is something that, muscle memory I suppose, will adapt to the Gamesir if you do choose this over the Kishi. Okay, so the next thing to talk about is the USB charging. So I found when I had my S20 Ultra in the Gamesir here that it wouldn't charge up for some reason. So I had a look, and there is only certain phones that are supported for charging on this controller. Now, I still don't really know why, but as I said, I think it's probably something to do with the chipset inside the gamepad that it just doesn't like certain phones. So I managed to get my Lenovo Legion phone charging, which wasn't on the list. So it's a bit of potluck really as to whether your phone will work with the Gamesir. With the Kishi, however, it's just a standard pass-through USB-C connector, and I have had no issues charging any phone at all with the Kishi. So again, that's another plus for the Kishi. No messing around, you just plug your charger cable in and away you go. One other small thing to bear in mind between these two controllers is the Kishi has these little sound vents, as I call them, which allows the sound to pass through where your phone speaker is, either left or right, or if you have a dual speaker at the bottom, it will come round and sort of come forward towards you. Now the Gamesir doesn't have that, sadly. It does have some little, I guess, grooves here, which are part of the grip, so the sound still can pass through. It's not like it's a solid piece of rubber that's going to block your speaker, but obviously the sound will blast through better on the Kishi when compared to the Gamesir. If your phone has front-facing speakers anyway, then that isn't anything to worry about, but most phones don't, so it is worth bearing in mind. Okay, next up we have the triggers. Now, the triggers on the Kishi are analog, so you get, multiple levels of pressure that you can apply, and depending on the game, it will obviously apply different pressure. The Gamesir, however, is just a simple on-off trigger. It's clicked in and it's on when you press it, whereas the Kishi, you do get those extra levels, which could potentially be useful in certain games. Specifically, if you're playing on Xbox Game Pass, for example, you probably do want to have analog triggers because that's more likely to support analog triggers than any Android games. I know some Android games do support them, but it is few and far between. But yes, the Gamesir does only have digital triggers, which is a bit of a shame really, because there's plenty of room here. They could have put analog in, but I'm guessing they're saving on costs or something. So that's another plus for the Kishi. So looking at the size of these two controllers as well, the Kishi is obviously a lot more compact in its sort of closed form, whereas the Gamesir is a lot wider. So you're more likely to be able to get this into a big sort of coat pocket, I suppose, whereas this would be sticking out. How often you carry around an Android controller in your pocket? I mean, I don't know anyone personally who does it, but this is a lot more compact, and therefore it's probably easier to take with you on your travels. I'm not saying the Gamesir is huge particularly. It is slightly wider than the Kishi, as you can see, but it's not exactly going to cause any problems just popping that in your bag or something. Okay, so that's quite a few positives for the Kishi. I do want to go over some of the negatives, however. So the first one being is that it is restrictive on the sort of phone you can put in here. So if we have a look at this mechanism here, we've got a sort of rounded piece of plastic which is determining how wide your phone can be. So if your phone is any wider than this, then you're out of luck. Now you can take this out. So I've pulled out the little insert there, which allows me to put a slightly wider phone in, as you can see. So I can now fit the Lenovo Legion inside, but I have found when you do this, you are going to get a level of sort of wobbliness inside. It's not ideal because obviously you're flexing on the USB port slightly. No, it's not a huge problem because obviously you got it secured in the other end, hopefully. But it is worth bearing in mind that even if you do take that out to get your phone in, it's not ideal. So the other thing I noticed after using the Gamesir is that the Kishi feels a lot less ergonomic. So you can see here that we have a very flat design, whereas just that little extra bump there on the Gamesir makes it feel a lot nicer in the hand. So when I started using this again, I felt it being a bit, I don't know, a bit flat, a bit square, a bit boxy, and it didn't feel as nice as the rounded effect we've got on the Gamesir. The other issue is obviously it's a lot more flimsy. So if you have a smaller phone, using my S8 as an example, it is a lot more flimsy and it doesn't feel as solid as the Gamesir. So the only other negative I could think of for the Kishi is that it doesn't come with a screenshot button, which the Gamesir does, as we can see here. Now that is a very minor little niggle, I suppose, and if you don't have it then you don't miss it. But now that I've been used to having a controller with a screenshot, I have found it quite useful, quite fun to take screenshots of certain things while you're playing, but that is something that the Kishi does miss, not that it's a huge problem. So the pros with the X2 here in comparison to the Kishi, the first one being the USB-C connector, which is movable, and that is really useful when you're pulling your phone in or out of the controller. The Kishi one is just completely set in place, so you're more likely, in theory, to damage your phone whilst using it. It's unlikely that you would if you're being sensible, but it is something that does differ between the two. Now the other thing I mentioned before about the restrictiveness of the Kishi with its sort of rounded enclosure here is that this Gamesir is not in any way restricting you on the width of your phone. So as long as your phone fits in here and it is wide enough to go in, you're not restricted. If my case, came out here, for example, if you had a really huge wide phone even, then it's not going to be restricted by the Gamesir because there's no rounded edges here, setting a limit to your phone width. Right, the last thing I want to show you is both of these controllers have issues with phones in cases. So you can see that the USB port is the same length on both phones, it sticks out the same amount. But if you have a case on your phone, you're going to have some troubles more than likely than not. So this is one of the thinnest cases I've got. It's basically just a complete, thin little shell for my ROG 3 phone. And the reason I'm showing you this, not because I'm going to put the phone in, but because it makes it a lot easier to see what's happening when you put your phone in with a case. So you can see here, this case would just be absolutely fine, just about, if the phone fitted in here, which it doesn't. But you can see here how much room you've got to play with, which isn't very much. If we try out another case here, so this is one that I've got for my Galaxy S8. It's just a cheapo £1 case, but you can see straight away, we pop that in, you can see that the connector is not going to reach your phone. There's just not enough space available inside for that to happen. I can prove that for you just in case. So you can see there's just not enough of the USB port available with this case on to make a connection, sadly. And you could feel straight away as soon as I took it off, it's not even connected. So an example where the case would not be a problem is here. So this, again, it's a very thin couple of millimeters, and the case would allow the phone to still charge up. So it's the same with the Kishi here. If I could, in theory, get this in, even though I've removed the plastic thing, I can't, but if it did fit in there, it would just about work. Now, you can obviously get cases like this as well, which have sort of nothing at the bottom where the charging or the headphone socket is. So obviously that would be absolutely fine as well. You'd be able to just pop that in with no problem. Same again on the Kishi, if the width isn't a problem. Let's check it out. Okay, yeah, just about okay there with the case on this one, so that'd be absolutely fine. Now, if your case has any kind of thing on the back, like this quite thick one here, you're gonna have no chance at all because, again, I can't even get it into the port here because there's too much width at the back. So I would say the bottom of the case, as we can see here, that's about 3 millimeters. 3 to 4 millimeters, you probably just about get away with it, but anything more than that, and you do have to take your case off on both of these controllers before you use them. So overall, like I said, you're not going to have any issues with either of these phones. If you bought the Kishi and you've just seen the Gamesir, don't panic because yeah, it's a lovely controller, but the Kishi is still fantastic and does everything you need it to. And if you are just unsure which of these to go for out of the two, obviously it's down to your personal preferences. There's the differences we've gone through at the beginning of the video. So if those issues aren't issues to you, then that's great, go for the Gamesir. But if you want the traditional Xbox experience, you're still probably better off going for the Kishi. So I hope you found the video useful. If you did, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos in the future. Let me know down in the comments below which one of these you're going to pick up. Like I said, don't panic if you bought one or the other because they're both great controllers and they both have their little pros and cons. The Kishi does have more pros, I'd say, than the Gamesir, but the Gamesir is still a fantastic controller. If you want to become a member of the channel and get access to exclusive member posts and streams, just click the join button and select one of the options on there that suits you. There's no pressure to be a member, it's just something that helps grow the channel slightly, and anything that's earned from channel memberships goes straight back into the channel. So thanks for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.